All right, let's get to the conversation, everybody. Who needs to have the biggest game, offensively and defensively, or at least who needs to step up, however you want to look at it, because stepping up can be interpreted as in they didn't step up previously, but who needs to have the biggest game? At least we'll start offensively, and I'll just get the easy one out of the way because I think I can't think of any other answer but this one. It has to be, and you could go two ways with this. Got to be Jared Goff, but that's kind of the obvious one. I'll go a little into why. I mean, you look at the Ravens right now, at least defensively, they're 20th, or excuse me, read that wrong, 12th in takeaways. Lions are 8th. So they're a team that can take the football away. They picked off Ryan Tannehill last week. Not saying Jared, he had some turnover issues early in the year, threw a couple interceptions. Like, this is one of those games where you just can't turn the ball over. That could just cannot happen. You saw what it did against the Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith, and how that benefited them. But regardless, I think turning the football, if you're on the road, you're facing a good defense, maybe an offense that lacks some explosive plays, but they are dynamic, you don't want to give Lamar a short field. You just don't. So turnovers are key in this football game. Don't turn the ball over. But Jared has to have a big game. I'm not saying that the Lions should abandon the run and Jared should throw 50, 60 pass attempts, but he's got to, of course, be accurate, which he always is. He's got to make the right decisions. Please, no turnovers. That's big time. And he's got to get the ball out quickly. Because this Ravens defensive line is they're coming, and they're up there in sacks. I believe I have to double check, but they're number one right now in sacks currently, and they have like 8 or 10 or something like that different players with a sack.
Sure.
So they got a lot of dudes that can get after the quarterback, Sam Flannel. So the biggest one, and I have another one I'll bring up, but the most important one I got to get out the way is Jared Goff. He's got to have a big game. He's got to have a big game.
Yeah, Jared Goff is certainly, no question about it. The quarterback is the most important position on any football team, and Jared Goff certainly has to play well. I'm going to go with another obvious one, but like you said, I'm going to explain a little bit deeper into why. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown because this season, the Baltimore Ravens, their pass defense, it is second in the NFL, which is very, very impressive in passing yards allowed per game. But I also was looking a little bit at some next-level stats and even watching a little bit of highlights, I would say. And Marlon Humphrey this season, the Baltimore Ravens star corner, he's been hurt for a lot of the year, but when he has played this season, he's kind of been burnt toast. Those are just what the numbers say. When he has been targeted this season, he has allowed a 139.9 passer rating. I obviously think that'll go down the more games Marlon Humphrey plays, but I think in this particular advantage, he is their best corner right now, Marlon Humphrey, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is the best wide receiver. And when you look at the Baltimore Ravens pass defense this year, and I know that when you're second in the NFL, it's impressive no matter what, no matter who the competition is. But let me just go through who the Baltimore Ravens have played. Not a lot of great quarterbacks. Spoiler alert, Jared Goff is the best one by far. Yeah. In the first game of the season, the NFL debut of C.J. Stroud. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is one of the Rookie of the Year frontrunners, but it's tough playing Baltimore in your NFL debut. And then in the second game, it was early season hampered by a calf injury, Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow back then, in the beginning of the season, he was not a good quarterback. He's obviously righted the ship a little bit and seems to be healthier, but still, back then, Joe Burrow was not the Joe Burrow that we know. In the third game, Gardner Minshew, solid backup. It's not that big of a deal to hold Gardner Minshew, even though the Ravens did lose that game. And then, when they played the Cleveland Browns, guess who the quarterback they got to face was? Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yeah.
And DTR probably had the worst game any quarterback's ever had this year. Honestly, I'm not saying it's DTR's fault. He wasn't ready for that situation, but still, it's a fairly easy matchup.
So what you're saying is the DTR hype train from the preseason came to a stop and never took back off.
That was actually getting a little bit annoying. There were a lot of people like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but anywho, and then the next game, my favorite quarterback of all time, being very sarcastic by the way, Kenny Pickett. And even though the Steelers won that game, it's still
it was like 15-9.
Yeah, right. It was an ugly game.
Yeah,
ugly.
Kenny Pickett made one play. And then in the last game in which the Ravens won in London, they got to play a combination of Ryan Tannehill and when he went down, Malik Willis. So Jared Goff in this Lions offense, which is by a mile the best they have faced this season and the best quarterback and the best offensive coordinator, it presents a new set of challenges. And that's why I kind of mentioned before that don't be surprised if Jared Goff has a big game. Don't be surprised if he can make some plays. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is his favorite receiver, and he is a guy that I think in a matchup versus versus Marlon Humphrey or Brandon Stevens, their other corner, or maybe even Rocky Ya-Sin. I know he's back. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has the advantage, and I think that the Lions are going to rely a lot on the short pass game, especially if their running game doesn't get going, especially if Jahmyr Gibbs is out or him and Greg Reynolds are hampered. So to me, it is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I expect a game which is a slightly less productive version of the game he had at Tampa Bay, something like 8 receptions for 92 yards and maybe a touchdown.
And I got the poll up here in the chat. Will Jared Goff have a big game? Shout out to Evan, by the way, my boy, Evan Sinelli in the chat. Happy birthday, Jeff. Appreciate you, Evan. Appreciate you guys for all the birthday wishes, man. Seriously, I know I can't get everybody, but I love you guys. You're the best. Another guy I want to mention, Lucas, before I throw it to you, that I think is just another obvious one, but I do think this game could be it. I know it's unfair. It's a good defense. But Jahmyr Gibbs, it doesn't have to be all rushing, but just scrimmage yards. Can we have a big game from Jahmyr? Come on. This has to be the game.
Would you want to see more than you did against Atlanta? 17 carries.
No, I'm not as mad about it. I like the amount of touches he got in the run game, but I'm talking like in the passing game. I would like to see like 40-plus yards receiving. Like, I just think you see Kamara, dude, not like what he can do, and I get they're easing Jahmyr along. I get all that, but
not this week.
I just looking at this Ravens defense, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for check downs. Like if they're coming after Jared, get the ball out to Jahmyr, allow him to make plays, get him in space. What do you think about that?
I mean, definitely. Jahmyr Gibbs has to have a big game, but another guy that I think has to have a big game is Jameson Williams.
Ooh.
I mean, show exactly why we traded up 20 spots to get you. You had a big touchdown, and I'm not saying this to hold it against him. Like Jameson Williams had a crucial play in last week's game. David Montgomery's not going to be there. To Flannel's point, like Marlon Humphrey isn't having the best season, but he is a premier corner in the NFL.
Sure.
Every team we want to Marlon Humphrey, and he follows. He's not a guy that stays on the left or the right. He's going to follow Amon-Ra St. Brown the whole game. Yep. So if Jameson Williams, with how talented he is, has a number 2 corner that I guarantee they're not going to be able to keep up with a man-to-man. And Baltimore runs man-to-man schemes all day just like Detroit. Kyle Hamilton's a good safety, but he's not a fast safety. I think Jameson Williams, both in the rushing game, I'd like to see him. Obviously, that's not out of control if he doesn't get any carries, but if he gets carries, make something out of it, and he needs to take the top off this defense just because there is no David Montgomery. You have to push those safeties and linebackers back somehow, and I don't think Craig Reynolds is going to do it. And if Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't get it going through the rushing game, I don't think that's going to do it either. I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on Jared Goff. That's going to leave the secondary a little vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, even to this comment, Eric, about Jahmyr Gibbs, this is the game where Gibbs should have 10 to 12 targets. In this one, David says, Jeff looks like he sells sneakers on a marketplace.
Damn. Jesus.
On my birthday. Come on, David.
Give this guy a day off.
You couldn't let me live on my birthday, David. Oh. Gosh darn it. All right, let's talk defense, though. The player that I thought of, because I thought about this, and there's a couple ways I could go. And honestly, I don't think there's a wrong answer. You need everyone to step up defensively, of course, and offensively. But for me, where my head goes is Brian Branch. This seems like one of those games where his value is super important because he's going to be in the slot. You know, he can affect the run game just as much as the pass game, and you got screen passes. Like, you see him blow up a couple of those plays, too. I believe it was the Packers when he blew up a screen pass.
And Bijan when he killed Bijan.
Yeah, and Bijan as well. I think this is one of those games where Brian Branch has to just be all over the place. And he has the ability on a game-to-game basis, Sam, to lead the team in tackles, and they're going to need him this week. Another one, I'll give a little side note, Anzalone, because of that spy. I mean, I don't know how – I'm curious how Aaron Glenn plays Lamar Jackson, but I would say a little mix of Jack Campbell and Anzalone, the linebacker core, Derek Barnes. Linebackers have to step up this game. They're going to be key for a victory defensively.
Those are some interesting ones. And I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit. I don't necessarily want to choose a specific player, which is why I'm glad you went with who you did. I think it's whoever is most integral in stopping Lamar Jackson on the ground, and Mark Andrews through the air. Because obviously Zay Flowers, I'm not disrespecting him. He's actually their leading receiver, and he's having a hella rookie season. But the Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews connection has been rolling over the past few years or so, and Mark Andrews is Lamar Jackson's favorite target and one of the best tight ends in the NFL. But what also Lamar Jackson is the best runner of the football from the quarterback position that has ever played. He's a guy that if he racks up a couple more 1,000-yard seasons, you could think of him as maybe the Hall of really good just off of being a running back. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but still. One of the few things that the Lions have done this year, one of the few ways in which they struggled, was in the first game at Kansas City, letting Patrick Mahomes get loose on a couple of scrambles. And obviously Patrick Mahomes has grown up to be brilliant at his pocket awareness, getting out and scrambling for first downs. But he's not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is the type of player that can kill you on the ground. He is their biggest rushing threat by far, and you're going to need someone, I think, to spy on him because Lamar Jackson's that type of quarterback more than any quarterback in the league. If you lose him, if you have everybody covered on like a 3rd and 10, Lamar Jackson can just take off for 10, 15, or maybe even more. He's the type of guy that can take it to the house on any play. And those are the type of games that break your back as a defense, and those are the type of games that swing games in favor for Baltimore. And then Mark Andrews as well. You don't want him to constantly be picking up 3rd downs, be that red zone threat. So that's where I'm looking for guys like Brian Branch and Tracy Walker to really step up. And I'm not saying stop him, but just kind of slow him down and make his job a little bit difficult. Because if Mark Andrews gets free releases and can kind of just go one-on-one and Lamar Jackson has time to throw, that is another way in which the Ravens can really hurt you. Because one thing that Lamar Jackson has always done well is throw the ball to Mark Andrews and his tight ends. It's always been his safety blanket, and I don't think he's going to want to change that in this game.
Trisha says, shout out to Trisha, by the way. We reconciled. All right, me and Trisha, we're fine now. She says if Alex Anzalone plays like he did against Tampa, Lamar will think twice. Yeah, you're going to need a big game out of Anzalone. We got people saying how Branch is key as well. They want Branch to be a spy for Lamar Jackson. I get all that. And you're gonna need a spy out there for Lamar. Even though he's not running as much, he's still a threat.
But he's still the leading rusher on the team, though.
That's what's crazy. He's the leading. And by the way, that Gus bus.
The Gus bus?
No, it's stopping in Baltimore and it ain't taking off. So I don't know what.
And I'm not saying he's that guy, but he's had, I believe it was I think he's had like 60 rushing yards for him over the last 5 games or something like that. So no, he's not gonna kill us. But as far as like, it's 3rd and 4.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Don't let Lamar beat you. They're going to hand it to Gus Edwards, and you can get that 4-yard carry, and you'd be like, fuck. And that's where Gus Edwards gets annoying.
So the death by 1,000 cuts. Those 2-yard carries are going to end up just.
He's good for 3-4 yards every time, but that's it. That's it. Justice Hill will get in there for a 9-yard rush.
He's got a ceiling in the run game. That's fair.
And that's the thing about Baltimore. And I know we kind of laugh at it now, especially since J.K. Dobbins was out. Even without Lamar Jackson, I mean, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, it's not like they've been lighting the world on fire, but they are just as running backs better than the running backs they had at Carolina and Tampa Bay, just off of their running backs. And I didn't even include Lamar Jackson. So this running game, when you include Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens is one of the tops in the league. And obviously the Lions have the best rush defense in the league, but Lamar Jackson is a different animal. The way you have to game plan to stop him is not the same as even some of the best running backs in the league, like Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, it's very different. Even for like Lamar, and I'm curious because we haven't really seen the Lions tested with a running back that's this dynamic. I mean, Desmond Ridder can kind of run. Like there's guys like Geno can break away. Like Patrick, same thing. They can break away and like kind of like Trevor did last night. But guys that are like home run hitters. Mm-hmm. Like they played Fields last year, but I think this defense is just more mature. Like if they face Fields this year, I don't see, and we'll see what he's got that thumb injury or whatever the hell it was. But like someone like Fields, I think they're much more prepared for someone like that this year. I think they understand where they went wrong last year, and Fields broke off a couple times. I remember that like 80-yard run he had against the Lions, and Jeff Okudah just couldn't catch him. Shout out to Jeff Okudah, by the way. But regardless, I think the Lions are much more prepared to handle a guy like Lamar. He's gonna make plays with his legs, but it's contained. It's not breaking containment. Sure. And I think Aiden being another year older and the rest of this defensive line, hopefully the whole not allowing guys to break containment kind of comes alive Sunday. Because if you allow this man to get outside the pocket, not only can he make plays outside the pocket with his arm, because he showed it this year, but man, with his legs. Well, especially in the red zone.
Oh, 100%. And that's where it's huge for the linebackers and safeties. Because Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil, I think that they're going to be able to pressure Lamar Jackson. But even even MVP Lawrence Taylor and Defensive Player of the Year 2018 Aaron Donald, when you pressure Lamar Jackson, he is going to escape at some points. And that's where you need the linebackers and the safeties and to be disciplined as a pass rusher as well. Because you can't – I mean, Lamar Jackson is just so dynamic. And I'm not saying Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil won't get to Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson is going to be flushed out and have opportunities to make plays with his arms or his legs. And that's where the defense, and as I mentioned before, guys like Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes, Tracy Walker, Brian Branch are going to have to stay disciplined. It's a tough matchup. I mean, I'm not as high on Lamar as some, but I can just imagine him being such a headache for defensive coordinators because him at his best – can kill you in so many ways, and even when you have everything played right.
It's crazy to think, too, for Lamar. Like, you look at his first year in the league, he only had almost 700 yards, but ever since then, he's essentially like, and he played in 12 games in 2021 and then 12 games in 2022, and he only had 700-ish yards. And he's on pace to have 1,000, but he had after this rookie year, he had 716 games. If he didn't get injured in those 2 years, he'd basically have 1,000 every year.
That's insane.
Rushing.
And he has a legitimate NFL arm now.
Yeah. So, yeah. Like, and I saw someone comment, why are we talking like he's Mike Vick? No, he's that guy. I think people kind of sleep. He's not doing it as much this year, but to your point, Sam, he still leads the Ravens in rushing, and he's on pace for 1,000.
Wait, who said something about Michael Vick?
I have to find
Lamar's
the comment.
best season was on the ground, at least, was better than Vick on the ground, too.
I mean, if we're just
the real K. Collins talking about Lamar Jackson like he's Mike Vick.
He is Mike. He's better than Michael Vick as a runner.
He's one of the
better
most
than Michael Vick as a runner.
Yeah, he's one of the most dynamic guys running the football. Now, Mike Vick has a much stronger arm, but
Right.
we're talking about running the football, man. Like, Lamar's that guy. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we'll get into a conversation that I want to have with everybody here, and let's revisit our Lions record predictions. I thought of the